Cool. So anyway, thank you guys all for coming out. Hopefully the next little bit of talking through AR gets you guys really excited about AR, and hopefully, just for starters, you guys know what AR is by the end of this talk. All right, so let's hop into it. So here's what I'm planning on covering with you guys today. The basic goal here is to give you enough of a crash course in augmented reality, or I'm going to call it AR, because otherwise there's going to be too many syllables in this presentation, that you understand these basic questions of, and most importantly, this bottom one of what can AR do for my business and what can I start doing today? Does this sound good? Okay, good. I'm really big on audience participation, so there'll be like lots of points where I ask you guys questions. Hopefully you're all right with that. Yeah? Okay. Cool. So first off, I'm a strong believer every presentation, the presenter should have to answer the question of why should you pay attention to me for the next X number of minutes. So here's the answer for why you should pay attention. So if you were a business back in 1999 and you weren't getting on the internet, you died, most likely, unless you were selling like screws or something that didn't really require the internet. The same thing happened when, say, 2007, 2008, if you weren't investing in mobile. This is something that most likely hurt your business. Now we're getting to that same stage again, and you can see how this is just a repeating pattern over and over, that if you're not starting to invest in AR and VR, or at Google, as we call that category in general, immersive computing, this is also an area where someone in your industry is going to start investing in. And the main question is, will it be you or will it be your competitor? So here, I also like simplifying things, like to the point of like brutal simplicity, because inside I really feel like a third grader or a 9-year-old. So I try to relate my slides that way. Here's the comic book version of what I just mentioned. So this is how computing overall has evolved. We've been getting smaller and smaller, and we've also been getting closer and closer to you. So this is that big jump between going from something in your hand to something that's closer to you and also understands what's going on in the environment around you, which is a much more intimate connection with your audience or your customer. All right, so that's why you should pay attention. Now we should probably explain, like, what is this augmented reality thing, right? Okay. So here's the spectrum. Who here is familiar with this? Okay, come on, this should be the easy answer. All right, then who here has done something with virtual reality? Okay, so about 40% of the room or so has put on a pair of goggles at some point. Augmented reality. Well, goggles that have like a computer screen in them, not swimming goggles. Okay. Okay. Augmented reality is that really fun thing in the middle where you are still getting to see the environment, your normal environment. I can still see the ground. I can still see Kike over there. I can see Paula here, but then I can also add a dinosaur, or I can add a TV if I'm trying to sell TVs. I can change Kike's face slightly to show me what this new shade of blush looks like on Kike's face. And I can see basically what my imagination is thinking. And that's a really powerful feedback loop that now your eyes can consume what your imagination is thinking. That's something we've never been able to do before. So to see if you guys understood that, of those three, which one is this? Which one? Okay, good. Which one is this? Real world, good. And which one is this? All right, good. Okay, so now on to who is using AR. So AR is something where every once in a while you see an app that is entirely about AR, such as Pokemon Go. Who here played Pokemon Go when it was really big last year? That's good. It's really fun, right? Like it's an immersive thing where similar to what we saw with the Kinect or with the where you're moving around in your environment and you're no longer just sitting and playing video games, but the world becomes your area where you're playing your video games. That's the real switch with augmented reality in the case of gaming. Now, it's not always that the entire app is tailored to AR. Sometimes it's like Snapchat, where it's just one feature, where it's the filters, but then the rest of it is just about taking pictures and adding some text. And that's a really common theme in AR, is that you don't need to go wholesale change to your product. It's really something that you add on top of your product. Who here has tried the Sephora app? This is one of those apps that's getting sneaky big. So what were your thoughts with the Sephora app? I couldn't say, oh, that's terrible. Okay, that's absolutely terrible. Okay, no, you should give them that feedback. Okay, so the Sephora app, normally if it works well, is able to change just specific parts of your face. So this is the example I was given with Kike with changing the blush on his face. That you can change the lipstick, you could change how I'm really bad at makeup terms, but change the stuff that goes here or change the stuff that goes on your eyes. I should practice that part of the script, right? Or you can just tell there's no script. So, and it's not only these huge brands that are doing AR. This is one thing I really want to drive home with you guys. You don't have to be a big player in the space. You don't have to be a Google and Amazon, a Snapchat in order to do this. Like, there are lots of AR products in the world now that are built for not a whole lot of money, because there's becoming commodity tools for how you can build this that are affordable. There's lots of developers who know how to build AR experiences. And you can create these really intimate experiences. Now, let's start with the scary one first. Who here's seen the most recent like Walking Dead movie or the video game that came out? Okay, or at least knows what Walking Dead is, right? Zombies. Okay, so this is a wine label. They did a limited release of a brand of wine that has the Walking Dead label on it. And when you put your phone up to it, the experience comes to life. Now, this is one of these other things that's transformational about AR, is you go from a world that's 2D. So think about that for a second. All the advertisement you've ever seen, for the most part, has been two-dimensional. Whether it's billboards, whether it's TV, whether it's online, all three of those major categories are all two-dimensional. AR gives you the option to now you can do three-dimensional things, where the zombie's reaching out from the wine bottle. Or in the case of actually this Australian brand of wine, where they've taken, their brand is 19 Crimes. And each of there's 19 different bottles they sell based on the 19 prisoners who were sent over to Australia. And each one of those criminals has a story. And so now they have this experience where you can hold it up to the wine bottle, and the wine bottle starts talking to you and they tell you their personal story of why they got sent to Australia. And of course, every one of them tells you that they're framed and blah, blah, blah. But these are these really intimate experiences. And if you have a choice, put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, who you're going to make a choice between brand A or brand B. And this is where you can differentiate yourself. That brand B has this exciting, intimate experience, and brand A just has a piece of two-dimensional content. Oh, there's a timeout on my laptop. It just means I didn't click it frequently enough. Okay, so that's an example. Those are some just top line examples of who's using AR. Now let's talk a little bit about how Google in general thinks about this, because we do spend an awful lot of time working on this. My full-time job is to work on AR. So here's, in a nutshell, what we think about it. So like we mentioned, this is the next big shift in computing in general. Not only is it like a form factor, not only is it a technology shift that you need to be investing in, but for us as a technology provider, this is the next big thing. Because now, as I was talking about, your standard two-dimensional content can become 3D. And from a computational computer science perspective, that's really challenging. All right, and then on the product side, we generally talk about AR in two senses. That it can be one, it can be useful, and the two, it can be fun. And I'll get to the fun in a second. So useful. This is an app that we just launched called Measure, that since every single phone has a understanding of where it is in the environment, and we know the environment down to metric scale, which means we know things with roughly centimeter degree accuracy, we're able to become the best measuring tape in the world for you. And we can do things, we don't do it in this GIF, but we can measure out this table and then do a volume on it, right? Like no tape measure is able to do that. And that again is that shift from two-dimensional to three-dimensional. It's pretty cool, right? Okay. And then we're also able to place anything in the world. So if you are selling any sort of hard good, whether it's furniture, consumer electronics, or anything that doesn't change shape that much, it's not that hard to build a 3D model of it. The 3D model generation tools have gotten really, really user-friendly in the last couple of years. And then you're able to do things like go from the shopping catalog to place it in your room. And again, get that feedback loop of, instead of the consumer having to make that leap of faith in order to do the checkout, they can now see what it looks like projected into their environment. Is it too big? Is it too small? And then make the purchase. That gives the consumer much more confidence, and it gives you, as the vendor, a much lower chance that you're gonna have to deal with the return process. All right, and then of course, AR can be fun, because with everything with Google, we try to make it fun. So there's two things to explain here, because it might not be self-explanatory why there's, well, who can tell me what I'll call it a sport, it might be a bit of a stretch, is going on here? Ice fishing, good, thank you, Kike. So now you can go ice fishing in the summer in Sydney, right? These are the wonderful things that AR is bringing to you, in addition to better ways to do commerce. And you can do it with your friends. This is part of an app that we launched back in May that allows you to do multiplayer ice fishing. This is what you've always wanted, right? Right? Yeah. And then, of course, you can do what you get for free on any Pixel camera, which is what we call AR stickers, where you can place a whole different catalog of three-dimensional fun assets, very similar to like a Snapchat type offering, into your environment, take photos with it, take videos with it, and even interact with the three-dimensional content. All right. So, and then here's the really important piece of how we as Google think about AR. It's a wonderful way to solve this question, which is, how do you get engagement from this guy or this girl who is heads down on the phone, is very well trained for how to get around ads, or just how to just flat out ignore them? How do you get their attention? It's becoming harder and harder, right? Like, we are becoming very sophisticated as human beings at filtering out noise, or at least just putting up walls. So here's a pretty cool experiment that an independent third party did. If you guys don't read Mindshare, it's a pretty cool consumer report that comes out once every quarter. Here's what they did. So they took 100 people, took them and put them in a PET scan. Who here knows what a PET scan is? It has nothing to do with dogs and cats. Okay, so so a PET scan is where they hook up a bunch of things to your head, and they're able to see your brain activity. And then they did two groups. So one, they gave the first group a list of tasks and asked them to do them without AR tools or an AR app. And then the second group, they asked them to do the exact same tasks, but with AR apps. This is the difference in cognitive engagement. So this is the light up in the brain. To explain the color coding, purple means basically not activated at all. And then as you work your way towards red, that's where it's extremely activated. Because AR ends up requiring you to activate the spatial reasoning parts of your brain, the cognitive engagement is almost 2x. It's technically 1.9x, but that's pretty good, right? There's not many things where you can double the amount of engagement you get out of your audience just by changing the platform. So this is one thing that gets us really, really excited on a whole lot of fronts, whether we talk about advertising or games or shopping or self-expression, or any of the other verticals where you could apply AR. All right, so here's a couple examples of things that partners have built using our AR stuff. So one, who here is familiar with Pottery Barn or has bought something from them? Cool, you guys have nice furniture. So here's what Pottery Barn's able to do. You shop through their catalog, and then once you select something, you're able to place not just one item, but multiple items into your room. So say you've moved into a brand new flat, you need to go through that exercise that everybody has to go through of decorating it. You can now, again, make that bridge between your imagination and what you see, where you can place the couch. That's okay. So anyway, you can project all the different items from their catalog and see them. That way, again, the consumer does not need to take that leap of faith. Your chance of doing a return is much lower. A lot of good things come from this. Similarly, showing that our tech works outdoors. Don't confuse this Lowe's with Australian Lowe's. This is the equivalent of Bunnings in the US. That we position their barbecues outdoors. Well, actually, they built this app themselves, just to be clear about the ownership. And you can see how even in outdoor environments where the lighting is really strange, where there's grass, the tech still works really, really well. And it's able to maintain still metric scale and everything still looks realistic. And then 3 is, again, hopping from like 2D to 3D. Now companies like eBay are able to use our tech to figure out what's the appropriate package size, which is something we can never do before, right? This is like one of those brand new capabilities where you're able to take like, this thing, and how much money do you save if you figure out the right box to put in? And you're no longer picking out too big of a box, because humans are really bad at three-dimensional reasoning or three-dimensional sizing. There's a similar experience that I don't have the GIF for, where you can flip this on its head and you can take the experience of, okay, Google, I have, hopefully I didn't just trigger a bunch of phones. Okay, good. I have, say, this volume right here. Tell me everything in my catalog on the website that fits in this volume. So doing a search, not based on a image or a piece of text, but instead based on like a volume with a bunch of pictures in it, right? That's a much more immersive way of doing shopping. All right, so is that making sense? You guys excited so far? All right, good. The ambient noise is getting higher. This is good. Speechless, thank you. Thank you, Paula. All right, so here's a quick overview of like what's new. Obviously, AR has been evolving for the last 3 to 5 years, but in the last 5 months, there's been this like firestorm of new stuff coming out that my team, we're very proud of all the stuff we managed to ship. So here's the slide of me being like the proud dad. Here's all the things that we managed to ship. So first off was we shipped AirCore. AirCore is this really cool platform. All the tech of being able to understand where the phone is in the environment as it twists, as the screen goes off, as the screen comes back on. We give that to you guys for free because we're Google. And so that shipped back in March, the first version. And then at I/O, I'll go through what launched here, but we launched a bunch of huge features that were a nice second addition to AirCore. And then we've had a bunch of large apps launch, such as like we launched an app with NASA. Who here's heard of NASA, right? We're getting to work. Thank you, Rogelio. All right, so here's some of the new exciting tech that's come onto the market in just the last 6 months from our team. So one is now you can turn any 2-dimensional image to trigger a 3-dimensional activity or a 3-dimensional piece of content. So now, say you have a box of cereal or a box of Legos. Now, instead of just being 2-dimensional, you can have the characters marching out of the screen. Right? Imagine how cool that is. You bring that home for the kid, and before they even open the box, they're excited. Like, or I guess anytime you bring home Legos, people are excited, but the excitement is more the important part. Similarly, bus stops, they're also 2-dimensional content, right? Same as billboards. Now we're able to activate that into a 3-dimensional experience. And this is also very cool from the perspective that it doesn't, there's a lot of times where new technology comes out and it requires you to like stop what you were doing and start something new. AR is one of those things where you can use what you've already been doing and dovetail it into the new thing. So for this, and what I mean by that is the existing advertisements that you already have, these can become activation points for an AR campaign without changing the asset. So there's no change required in order to build on top of it. Think of it from like in terms of like building a house. If you built a house and then it turned out magically that was the perfect foundation for building a much larger house on top of it, like that's the nice benefit we're giving you here. All right, let's see if the video auto plays or not. Might need to go click. No, there we go. So here's another example. This is one we built for a demo at Google I/O back in May. This is in the screening area before we let the press in. So you can see how a 2-dimensional asset, again, activates, and all of a sudden you get this 3-dimensional piece of content that comes out of the wall and then comes out at you. And you'll see them in a second here, like walk around it. And you can kind of feel in your head right now, like how your spatial reasoning has been turned on. you're actually having to think about like, oh, cool, like I'm rotating and it stays put, and like there's depth. You never have to think about depth. And here we go. This is also an experience that we launched. So we also launched multiplayer at I/O. And multiplayer, you might think of in terms of video games where you only have 2 people. This works with as many people as you want. So we've done a test where we did up to 100 people. There's like no reason we can't do this with 100,000 people of everybody drawing in the same space. So like this is like whiteboarding on crack, right? You can just draw anywhere. And like, you actually now need to pay attention to, as you're drawing, like what's the depth, right? Because if I look at this from the side, it can look like a completely different piece of content. Oh, and here's a quick overview of like this really hard problem we had to solve in order to enable multiplayer. So previously in AR, if Paula had a device and I had a device, that Paula, whatever, say she was placing like some Star Wars characters, and then I'm placing some Star Wars characters. Those 2 sets of Star Wars characters couldn't interact and have a battle scene because they were in their own little universe. Like each one's a different bubble. So what we did instead was we came up with this new tech called cloud anchors, which is where you can create a common point. And when Paula creates her session, we upload a map to the cloud. And then when I create my session, we match what I'm seeing to what Paula's phone has been able to see, and then recognize that both of us have this point in common. And then all of a sudden we're able to create a 3D scene that works together, which is pretty cool. Like this is one of those like big triumphs of computer vision that's like been a breakthrough in the last couple of years, and we're giving it away for free. So hope you guys enjoy that. Oh, and by the way, the new tech we launched runs not just on Android, but on iOS. We're very big on inclusion. We think that you shouldn't be segregating which friends you play multiplayer games with based on their operating system. There's already enough like differences in the world. We don't need more of them. So this is also very exciting for us that our tech now works on cross-platform. All right, you guys want more demos? Okay. So I mentioned we built an app with NASA. This is an experience where, let me put it this way. I'll give you 2 options. Who would rather learn about the Mars rover, A, from a textbook, or B, from a 3-dimensional model that you can play around with your friends and disassemble it on the fly, but without making a mess in your room? Okay, who wants A? Okay, who wants B? Oh, good, all right. So that's what we built. So, and again, this is another thing. We're similar to the billboard assets that you can just go ahead and build on top of those. Like it's a perfect foundation for AR. NASA, when they go to build something, they already build a 3-dimensional model. So they already had this asset that did not need to be built for the experience. We just took it and plugged it into an AR app and then added some kind of multiplayer game state on top of it. Total development of this game was 3 weeks, which is incredibly short in the video gaming. 2 is this was actually built by an Australian startup based in Melbourne. That now you can essentially build these like Minecraft pieces of artwork together. So you can see all 3 or 4 people are able to see the same scene together, again, using cloud anchors. And then they're able to build all this cool stuff together. Oh, and the cool thing is those models, they also hooked up to, they figured out the right file format to export it so that you can then 3D print it when you're done. Which is pretty cool, right? Like we're just taking like all cool forms of tech except for blockchain and like slamming it together and creating a fun product. All right, 3. I thought you guys didn't get enough ice fishing. So this is more ice fishing. See these cute penguins, right? Now you guys really want to do ice fishing? Okay. And then 4 is shopping. So I've shown you guys a couple examples. This is another one of a company called Jet, where you can take they sell consumer electronics. You can take any of those electronics and place them into your environment. And again, they stay at what we call metric scale, which means it'll be the same size that it'll be when the product physically shows up in your room. Click, click. Cool. And then this is also very exciting. If some people care a lot about advertising and some people try to avoid them. for the folks who do care about advertising, because it's a great way to reach your customers. Now we started this new pilot where, oh, we'll wait for it to come around again, but where you're in either the Wall Street Journal and New York Times apps, and you see a normal two-dimensional ad where it'll have just an image of Nespresso and a couple other partners that we have in our private beta right now, and then you click on it to see it in your room, or to see it in your kitchen in this case. So you click on it. Oh, here we go. So you're going to see it from the top. Well, in a second, there we go. So you scroll down, just reading your normal articles. There's what looks like a normal display ad, except for you see that yellow button of see in your space. And then when they click on it, then all of a sudden you are transparently put into an AR session, which is pretty cool, right? Like this is back to that initial thing of there are a couple apps that are AR and that is all they do. And then there's a whole bunch of apps that are about adding AR as an additional feature where it's a point of differentiation. All right, so now on to let's be practical about this. What can AR do for my business? So here's our general hypothesis, is that the world gets better when you have a richer input and a richer output. Whether it's for the experience you can generate for your customer or for avoiding pitfalls such as the avoiding returns and other downsides that we try to avoid in business. So here's examples. So richer input. Let's just take this from a Google perspective of when you go to Google something, you normally mean typing something in. What if we can turn that on its head and can take an image and then we can parse what's in that image and then use that as the search string or the replacement for the search string, where we're doing a visual search through the world. And that's pretty cool. Similarly, with a richer output, what if we're able to annotate what's going on in the camera in real time and understand where you are and give you walking directions? That's pretty important, right? And again, you can apply that to your own business. If there's situations where someone's trying to describe to you, there's a leak in my faucet, and you want to do remote plumbing, now you're able to do that, where you can be giving them the camera feed and you can relay this camera feed all the way back to someone that's at a central location. And then you can be giving them a AR overlay, explaining them how to self-fix. I can walk through a bunch of verticals. I just went from really one end of the spectrum of Google to plumbing. But you can imagine how the other ones in the middle would work. There we go. Okay, so here's the ways that we can add value. So take, for example, auto sales. So your traditional way of doing auto sales is you just have, again, something that's 2D. How well do you understand what's going on with this truck and what this truck looks like, especially if you've only seen it a couple of times on the road? You probably have specific questions around how big is this window in the back, or how high is this clearance? And then currently what you'd have to do is go look up on some fact sheet, figure out the right terms to describe that this is the lift between the ground and the chassis. And you have to go find those specific keywords. Now what you can do is you can put that model, again, at metric scale in your room and zoom it around. So because the output that you can give to the user just gains that much more faith with them. Back to the Sephora app, you can give people a lot more confidence about what highlights to the hair will look like, what that shade of blush will look like, and you can really bridge that gap. Cool. Also, take, for example, what we can do with Starbucks. Now your menu can become an immersive experience, whether it's looking at the menu and being able to see oh, okay, that's what every single item on the menu would look like, or just being able to order as soon as it sees in your screen that oh, there's a Starbucks nearby, and being able to place that order. And then additionally, in the how-to space, there's a whole who here has had this problem of trying to figure out all the different buttons, especially when you travel to a different country. I've had one. Let me just share one of my own terrible experiences with washers and dryers, because I'm sure we all have this experience once or twice in our life. The first time I ever went to Ireland, the buttons there is no text, because in Ireland they're English speaking, but there's these weird hieroglyphics that represent like the settings for washing and drying. And good luck searching for these hieroglyphics, because again, there's no letters. So I put it on some setting, and I couldn't get my clothes back for like 6 hours because I had to try each one of the different settings, and it just turned out that like there was 6 of them, and I just went clockwise, and it turned out it was the last one was the one that like gave me my clothes back. I would like to have those 6 hours of my life back, but so this is something that motivates me every day. So now we can at least pay this forward so that people in the future can see a 3-dimensional model in front of them and see it turning to the right setting. Again, and then it becomes no longer a game of like read the text and figure out what to do. It's more like monkey see, monkey do, which is a lot easier. And like your customers will be a lot happier for you, or happier with you. And then we also make, back to the point of expressing your imagination to your eyes. We make this a lot easier. We make things that were previously impossible possible. And who here is familiar with 360-degree video capture? Yeah. So there's a bunch of new tech that's come on the market. For example, we put out a camera with Lenovo back in January that does 180-degree capture. And then there's a similar one that does 360. You see it a lot in adventure sports films. And I think it'll keep on expanding beyond that. You can turn that 360-degree capture into an AR experience very easily, because now the phone understands like the tilt and the yaw as you move around. And so that can turn into a really fun experience too. And then also, again, step-by-step of like how to make coffee. Who here knows how to make a cappuccino? Okay, see 2, 3 people. Thank you, Rachel. Now you can learn. Now I can walk you through a 3-dimensional model and show you step-by-step what to do. All right, so home stretch here. So how can you get started with AR? There's 3 steps. So 1 is identifying a specific pain point. Like identify a problem to solve. This is just something with tech in general, not specific to AR. You should always be trying to solve a problem, not just picking up technology and like trying to shove it in. Like make sure you're solving something that adds value for your customer. 2 is once you've come up with that, get the right team or find the right partners. There's a whole slew of developers. It's getting easier and easier every day to find the right talent for this. And then 3 is invest in a 3D asset creation strategy. Now you might be asking like, that's something that's new, right? How many of you guys have 3D assets sitting around? Okay, 0 hands. So in case you don't have 3D assets, we also have this other product that my team puts out called Poly. So you guys are familiar probably with like Google's mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. Poly's goal is to make the world's 3D information accessible, and like, same thing as the general Google mission. So what Poly is a repository of all these public domain 3-dimensional assets that other people have uploaded. A lot of them have been created by Google. Feel free to use them. Like these are wonderful 3D assets. If you want mushrooms, hot dogs, that can at least get you started. And then once you have a proof of concept, then create like a proper 3D asset. And you can see all the cool assets here. And again, so 82% of these are like publicly what we call remixable, which basically means you can use them. And they're, since we are a search company, we made everything very search accessible. And again, they're free to use. And, yes, and you can search. Cool, so that's everything I had for you guys. I'm happy to do Q&A too, if you guys want to talk through any questions. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time. I hope you guys learned stuff. Did you guys learn stuff? Was this exciting? Yeah. All right, good. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to ask a question to James? Let's do maybe 3 questions.
So I've been using a little bit about the AR, and one of the things that I identify is that it's quite hard sometimes for you to actually manage your device and actually draw on the screen and position yourself to actually manage that.
Yeah.
Given that you've already made 1 step towards this, will maybe the Google Glass be a better fit for this sort of technology in the future? And what are the difficulties of actually getting this sort of technology into like a glass like that? I know that it's been pulled and all of that, but I bet that you guys are still developing on the technology. So will that be a better fit, or the key missing point that you actually needed to put it through?
Okay, cool. Great question. So here's the answer. So yes, like a Google Glass type experience, whether it's something that looks like a normal fashionable pair of glasses, or maybe even a contact lens that is a AR overlay for the world. That's the end goal. Yeah. So we're working towards that. No, absolutely. We're working towards that. But the thing is, we need to find same thing as any other startup. My team, we very much view ourselves as a startup, that you have to follow product market fit where you find it. And right now, it's not socially acceptable to have like what the current tech we can put out there, because it's too big, it's too bulky. It looks like you're some combination of like different Arnold Schwarzenegger movies as you walk around, and that's just not okay. That was the main thing we learned with glass, is that it's not socially acceptable right now in the current form factors. But what is socially acceptable is using your phone. So that's where we're investing right now. Our hypothesis is that smart glasses or smart contacts will definitely become a thing. It's just a question of when, and also miniaturizing that. It's a combination of when the tech meets the point where it's satisfactory to consumers. And in the meanwhile, we're going to invest heavily in phones. That's the short answer.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Quick question. How much of this technology is freely available? So you said it's available, but I've got a phone and I'm a Google user, but I haven't come across this as a free concept. Yes, through the apps that various businesses offer. Yes, I've seen that. But can I, as a person, just a lay person, use it today?
Sure, great question. So at the end of the day, we, like my team, what we build, what's called AR Core, is a developer-facing product. So all we can do only what we can control only what's in our control, which is we make AR cores free to developers. Now we don't have any control over whether or not wants to, if their business model is to make it free and to just go for mass adoption, or to do freemium, or to do pay only. All three of those models do exist. For example, Snapchat is completely free. There's a couple of premium AR experiences, such as one that's been incredibly successful for builders, is basically a premium version of that measuring app, where you can build out floor plans and it'll remember like entire rooms, and then you can annotate walls for like as you want to do renovations. That's a pay for app, and it'll follow the same dynamics as like general apps. Because again, this is like a theme with AR, that it's not going to be wholesale different from normal apps. It'll just follow that same distribution of some will be free. Like you can have Snapchat on your phone right now, or you can have AR stickers on your phone if that's a Pixel. Yeah. But there's lots of other AR experiences that are free. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So the underlying technology is completely free. Yeah.
And last one, no one? All right. Well, thank you so much, James, for that. That was amazing. I think I've seen you a couple of times present, and I've seen your videos and everything, but every time I see you talking, I learn new things, and there's new things that come out and everything from your team. So thank you very much for joining today. Cool. And I'm sure Pau wants to say something because she loves the microphone.
Can you share with us some like the secret stuff you're working on that is not too secret, like some of the stuff we should keep our eyes open? Like for us at HOLA Entrepreneurs, we're looking at how we can use like technology to help connect entrepreneurs and empower them, but I haven't seen how that could help us like with every day. I've seen a lot with the products and sales of products, but not for services.
Sure.
Anything we should be preparing for?
I'll tell you a pattern that we're seeing a lot that's not confidential, but like it's just not well surfaced. and that is what we call remote co-presence. So remote co-presence is this pattern where it's that plumbing pattern that I was describing, where because now the phone has an understanding of your environment, we can relay that, and then because the internet is fast, we can take that understanding from the phone and we can transmit that back to someone in a call center or, and the skill in the call center can be various. But let's say it's a premium call center, or let's say it's just a distributed network where you have 4 or 5 plumbers, or you have 4 or 5 auto mechanics, or you have 4 or 5 say you're the people that do repairs for printers or coffee machines, any sort of thing where you need to have a skillful person, doctors as well, that now you can build up a 3-dimensional model of what the phone is seeing. You can send that to the other person on the other end, and then they can they can give you advice in real time and even annotate your 3D scene. That is an entirely new pattern in the, like you were saying, like products and services. That's a new pattern in the services category that's never been possible before. And we're seeing a lot of large partners investing in that area heavily. So if you're a startup that is in the services area and you need to do a pivot, or you want to do a pivot, like that's something I would be considering. That would be my most interesting semi-secretive tidbit that's not really secretive.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
Amazing. Round of applause for James. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all right. Thank you. And thanks for coming, and hope to see you on the next one. Cheers.